504-339-1122. Who among the transfers on the Baylor football roster will have the most positive impact this season and why? Siaka Ika, Jacob Gall, the offensive lineman from Buffalo, Ika from LSU, Drew Estrada, who we really never saw much of during the spring. He was out, did not play a lot, wide receiver, and Grant Miller, the transfer offensive lineman from Vanderbilt. And why? 254-339-1122. And right now, I knew this was going to probably be the case, but you don't know, is Ika's got 74% of the vote among the first 100 people who have voted. So I thought Jacob Gall would get a lot more. You mentioned him. I would think that Ika can have a huge impact, and probably perhaps the most, but with the offensive line needing everything, Gall can possibly be part of the glue that helps them. And then, of course, that affects quarterback, wide receiver, running back, and it affects the defense, too.
Even without a guy like Apu Ika last year, they didn't really get gashed in the run most of the time. So, that's what he's going to really do is stuff the run. So, again, I know he's going to have a big impact, and I'm pretty sure he is, and I know that he's probably going to be the most notable player, but the most notable issue is the fact that no matter who was playing center last year, they were getting run through.
All right, from Gary Wilson, he'll keep the line. Siaka Ika busy so the linebackers can run wild. From Maxwell, I've got Ika just because there's a good chance we'll need the defense to carry us for a game or two. Linebackers could be dominant behind the big-time nose tackle. Matthew said, I don't worry much about the defenses. Aranda's great at that end. The offensive line shaping up nicely. Went in to talk quarterback, whatever. So he didn't quite answer the question, so I followed up, and he said, I think Drew Estrada, the wide receiver, who we never really saw.
No.
In any of the open practices or unless I was looking at the wrong player.
Is he here yet, or was he still?
No, he was here.
He's hurt. Yeah. He was hurt. Remember, he talked about his hamstrings back during the springtime.
And a guy like that who's, about speed, he wore number 18 jersey.
I mean, I think he's going to be good. I don't think he's going to be the best of the guys to come through. I mean, maybe he is, but I think everybody's just picking Ika because he's a fun guy and he's vocal on social media and he's been hyped up. He was made to be a big deal from the moment he arrived. So I think just people are – I mean, what have we heard since Jacob Gall committed about him? Not a single thing. Not a single thing. Drew Estrada, basically nothing. So, Siaki's more Apu's more vocal. He's more out there, and I think he's just got a fun personality that people have latched onto. I think that's part of it.
Yeah, I do think that Ika being the personality has a lot to do with that as well. But I do think that Gall, if he then sets up everybody else to his left and right, especially at the guard position, where they have something inside to be able to move some bodies and have at least a little bit of that ability to run the football, then perhaps in the end he might have bigger impact even than Siaka, who was a beast. You hear all the coaches talking about him, and you could see Dave Aranda smile when and was Gall even here during spring? No, he wasn't. So we didn't get a chance to watch him do much. And I do think that there's been a lot of people are sleeping a little bit on Grant Miller, who I think maybe is trying to figure out, and so is Mateos, what is his best place. Offensive line on the center or guard, because I thought he came in to help solidify center. They didn't have Gall, and then that's not the way it worked out. And I'm not so sure Grant wasn't a little bit, what's the word, a little bit frustrated, because I don't know where he was. And a lot of it, you got to do that yourself as a player. And so if Gall and Miller can come in and give them at least stability in the offensive line inside, then obviously that sets up everybody else. I still wonder about right tackle. Honestly, I wonder about every five offensive, all of them. Even Connor Galvin.
I'm not that worried about Connor Galvin. That's just me though. Elsewhere, I'm curious just to see what it looks like. I mean, they seem to have some pieces, and maybe not all the pieces that they need just yet. I mean, but they're going to have to. You got to play with what you have. So, I mean, there's not really time to go add some great left tackle now. You got who you got. So, coach them up, get them better, and get them protecting the quarterback, and you can go win a bunch of games next year if you do that. Because, that's the thing that people forget, too. The defense isn't great. It was probably overrated a little bit last year because the offense was so god-awful. And the fact that the defense was the only thing that was worth watching for 95% of last year, and the only thing that was entertaining. But they could be massively better, in my opinion, because not like they got a whole lot of coaching of that defense before everything fell apart either. I mean, we talk about the offense, but that was also a brand new defense. So that was something different for them to have to learn, and they weren't all, 100% from game number one on what they were supposed to be doing. So I would think that there will be quicker reaction times just because guys are far more familiar with their responsibilities.
From Daniel, I think Texas is overrated, K-State underrated. If Baylor doesn't make a bowl, it will be a disappointment, but not a shock to me. From TJ, I really don't see how anyone can base anything off of last season anyway. That's from TJ.
Yeah, I mean, I'm there with you as well. There's some things I think you can see. I mean, we saw a little bit of Jacob Zeno and looked like a dude that was super uncomfortable at times. Looked like a guy who was, someone who hadn't played a whole lot. So we did get to see things like that. But for the most part, no. I mean, you can't really do any comparison to the offense from last year because, what are you going to compare exactly? Everything's different now. And the defense, I think you can carry over some things from that. But offensively, I don't know how you would.
Well, what we saw last year is the teams that were already loaded for bear, they were able to navigate it because – they were loaded. I mean, that's everyone expected them to be. Nothing ridiculously tragic happened to them. But if you have, one, a new coaching staff, and two, you don't know if you're on Thursday, if you're going to play on Saturday every week, which was the case for the majority of the teams in the country. I mean, that's something that I don't think you get over.
Wasn't Penn State a huge drop? Yeah. Michigan obviously had a drop.
Didn't Baylor also have a month off in the middle of the season? Yeah. That's the thing too. Is they won 2 games. They also missed a month due to COVID. A month. They had to move 3 games to get enough guys healthy. So we're also we don't even bring that part up. We don't even bring that up half the time. And it just dawned on me oh yeah, the team that won 2 games also missed a third of their season at one point, because they had to sit on the sidelines with COVID protocol. So, that didn't help anybody learn, get better, grow really in any way. And you saw the shape the team was in by the end of the year. Oklahoma State went ahead and just put the last bullet in their head and, ended it for them. But, that's another thing. We don't even add all this stuff up. Brand new coach, no spring ball, terrible offense that doesn't gel with anybody practically. A month off for COVID in the middle of the season. Guys missing every single week, 2 or 3 guys missing every single week. They
had to play their last game without the majority of their coaching staff and the majority of the team. And
their coaching staff was missing.
They didn't need. Usually they need a plane and then other people go up. They needed less than the plane that they had to
They were the most riddled team COVID wise.
Or they would have needed less than a plane. Yeah.
Yeah, they were the most riddled team in the Big 12 last year COVID wise. Mm-hmm. With a brand new head coach and no spring ball and, an entirely brand new coaching staff for the most part and a new strength and conditioning guy when they didn't even really have strength and conditioning, and they were the most riddled with. Look at all these factors that play in. It's not like they went out there. They were really well coached and they had spring ball and everybody was available and everybody was 100% healthy and they just went out and got their heads kicked in. No, they went out there sometimes with half the offense that was supposed to be out there. The guy coaching half that offense didn't really know what he was doing. There were so many different things that were thrown in their pathway.
Okay, you've made all those points. Now, those excuses are over.
I agree.
And so now that gives you a mulligan. And I even thought that Matt Rule's first year was a mulligan. And obviously, thank God for him, it was at 1-11, because then what he did 7-6 and then the 11-3. So last year has all these excuses, and a lot of them are very legitimate. But those things are now out the window. Year 2, you had an offseason, you had spring drills, you have a new strength and conditioning coach pretty quickly, you changed some of the offensive staff, you brought in some people at key positions where you needed them, and guess what? You got to go win. You got to go win something. You got to go look like a football team. I'm not so sure. I remember saying that early in the year. I just want to see them go out and look like they've been practicing. And then again, they never really did. So that's something that maybe was even too high of an expectation.
I would think I would like to see the grid of days where they had a full actual practice. And then
a full actual, like with everybody.
With everybody, like a full actual practice. Okay.
No.
And then
even before they started practice.
And then did it again the next day.
No, they didn't. Well, I was told even this year the offensive line never had back-to-back practices with everybody there because of bumps and bruises, because of this or that. And, you know, that's kind of getting tiring. And that doesn't mean that it's not true or factual or evidence. But you know what? Get your big boy pants on. Go play football. And I think that's why Eric Mateos coming in brings that mentality. And that's why early on Jeff Grimes talked about he wants a violent offense. He wants to run a violent offense. Maybe that was as much, that's what he wants to do, but also a message, that's who we're going to try to be. That, I mean, you can say it, but that doesn't mean you're going to do it. But I do think that you'll see a little bit of that where you actually punch somebody rather than are the one taking all the punches.
Yeah, you know, I'm just looking at the schedule last year. I mean, Kansas, that should be a 30-point win every time. That should be a 30-point win this year as well. Your second game of the year, you're losing double overtime in Morgantown.
Yep.
Now, granted, you know, these teams are also dealing with their stuff, but I don't recall any games where they, like, missed the starting quarterback when they played teams. I mean, maybe there was one or two where there were some key players missing, but it almost always felt like Baylor was the one that had somebody important missing. And so you have a double overtime loss to West Virginia. Then you had 3 weeks off because of a COVID outbreak. You go to Austin in game number 3. You lose by 11. Okay, that's respectable. Following week in Waco, it's your third game since, your fourth game since September 26th, and it's now October 31st. And you lose by 10 to TCU, a touchdown loss in Ames, like... I mean, 1 point loss to Tech in Lubbock.
What would have happened if they beat? If. But they had the game with Iowa State, not in control, but they were at least dictating the tempo. They win that game in Ames, they win the game in Lubbock because then it's just going to happen. Because that game was a team just almost like just waiting to be put to in the electric chair.
And then you're talking about a team going 4-5 with a brand new head coach and all the stuff that we've already talked about ad nauseum. So, and I know it doesn't correlate exactly like that where, well, what happened in 2020 means, no, there's going to be some of these teams that are better than they were. There's also going to be some teams that aren't as good as they were. And, Baylor's a team that should be better. So, I mean, they were in close games last year. Other than Oklahoma State, no one, not even Oklahoma, really just beat the mess out of them. It felt like that at times, but they were pretty much in games, and they were in games without having any offense pretty much to speak of. You were talking about what, maybe 2 out of every 10 drives they actually crossed the 50? Maybe? Like, to get to the 50 was a whole drive for the Baylor offense last year. So these are all the reasons why I'm being optimistic, and I'm with you. There's no excuses. Like, if they go out and they win 2 games this year, Dave Aranda is on the hot seat, and there's no question about it, and there will be no excuse to not have him on the hot seat because there's no excuse to only win a couple games this year.
Yeah, I agree, and he knows that, and Mac Rhodes knows that, and anybody goes out, and if Kansas State doesn't do well, if Wells doesn't have a team that goes to a bowl game, he's going to be on the hot seat. We will be at Big 12 Media Days both tomorrow and Thursday at AT&T Stadium in Arlington. We are going to